That the Supreme Court judge thing that you brought up, that's something that a lot of Sam Cedar listeners bring up a lot to discredit Jimmy Dore, even though Jimmy Dore has been more right on the issues than Sam Cedar has. So
Right.
Jimmy Dore is a figure who I think appeals to not only liberals or people who are independent, but also to some conservatives. And that
Yes.
goes again to the what we were talking about earlier, how we need to coalesce not just liberals or people on the left, but we need to coalesce everybody. Um, so what what can what would you say, like, for the viewers who don't know, what has Jimmy Dore been correct on that the Sam Cedar crowd has been incorrect on? Would you say,
Oh,
and what do you think that Sam Cedar is overlooking and that crowd is overlooking? Do you think that they haven't read enough history, or do you think that they are just completely blinded by their um, left wing agendas that they don't realize, or maybe they do realize?
I don't know if it's got with the history aspect why Cedar thinks and acts the way that he does, and says the things that he says. But at the end of the day, you know, he pushes a very kind of center of the road type deal when you look at it. When the rubber meets the road, he's a very take what you can get type of guy, and arguably Cenk Uygur has turned into another one at this point. But Jimmy's been telling them, this entire time that this doesn't work. Now I think Sam's most recent pushback at Jimmy was he was saying, Jimmy's stance was, hey, if I don't go vote for your candidate, Hillary Clinton, and you realize she's going to lose to Donald Trump the next time around, you're going to then try to put somebody that I would have voted for up against Donald Trump, and then they'd be able to win. He made that was the case that Jimmy made the last time around when he didn't vote for Clinton. And he said, but hey, guess what? That didn't happen. Well, that's true. But that's just simply because you're going from the premise right there in the first place that the Democratic Party is hell bent to win. They're not. They would like to win, but they would much rather have Donald Trump back in office than Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders in office, because while that might not appeal to their base, it's appealing to their donors because he's doing what they want. You know, while I do think Trump has come to the left of Joe on trade, his new NAFTA 2.0 really didn't change very much. So he sold, he sold us out on the trade issue when he had the opportunity to do something else. He didn't do what he said he was going to do there. Okay, we keep getting into a tariff, a war with China, which unfortunately some people are critical. I think you're probably going to have to do something like that to ever get something worked out and to rein this, abuse we get from trade with China in. You're certainly not going to be able to get them to bend the knee to you by saying pretty please with cherries on top. Why? They're getting too good of a deal from the current system. They're going to say, yeah, go pound sand, son. We like what we've got. You can get over it if that's, all you want to do. You've got to kind of, trade punches there. And unfortunately, the economic backlash will hit people. But to go back to Cedar and Dore, you asked what has Jimmy been correct on that, Sam Cedar has been incorrect on. Okay, let's go all the way back. You've got things that Jimmy Dore will call out about the whole Russiagate thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't watch a ton of Sam Cedar, but correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe he was a Russiagator. He was right in there with the TYT crowd. Even if it wasn't the mainstream media's version of it, I think he was a Russiagator.
Big
Jimmy Dore
time.
was right there saying, yeah, that this is nothing but a bunch of smoke and mirrors to distract you from bigger issues, to keep us, hot against the Russians, to keep the people angry at the Russians. We got to have that boogeyman. So Jimmy Dore was saying that, okay? Jimmy Dore was saying that the Democrat Party is corrupt, they only serve their donors, and then he's calling out Bernie Sanders for being too weak about saying these sorts of things. So Jimmy Dore, of course, brought up who he voted for. He voted for Tulsi Gabbard. Now, at the time, which one was being, more hardcore against the establishment and taking the gloves off and really throwing the punches. Tulsi, in my opinion, was throwing them a lot more punches and a lot harder than Bernie Sanders.
Way more.
But of course, Sam Sedar was right in there with that crowd saying, "Hey, look, Tulsi Gabbard should just drop out of this race. She's a waste of space. Why doesn't she just endorse Bernie Sanders because he's the man?" Well, we see how the Bernie Sanders campaign turned out. He wasn't the man, So I would say that's another plus right there. If Tulsi had Bernie's momentum that Bernie had going into this behind him, I think she could have took Joe Biden down had she chosen to do so. But she didn't have the name recognition. Too many people wanted Bernie because of what happened the last time around. But vice versa, you had people that think he sold out the last time around, and they went to the Tulsi camp, the Yang camp, X, Y, and Z. So I think the fact that, Jimmy chose Tulsi over Bernie right there, to me, even though Bernie did better, shows another plus, because the guy who people like David Pakman, who at the time, people like Mike over at the Humanist Report, who TYT, and the Majority Report, all these people were pushing and says, he's the guy. You need to understand that. He's better on policy. He's better on everything you can name. Bernie's your man. You need to just leave Tulsi alone. This is a waste of time, okay? Well, we see how that turned out. He did better than her in the primaries because her message was buried and smeared by half of indie media. But the guy they propped up absolutely, dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we could go through a long list of things that I could say between the two of them from what I've watched of Sedar and things I've heard of Jimmy Dore where he's been right. But at the end of the day, from what I've gathered on Sam Sedar, I'll leave it at this. I think Jimmy has pretty much described it best. I think this is someone who's trying to appeal to a outsider kind of audience to some degree, while also potentially maybe still auditioning to be that next TYT, where someone with a lot of money is going to come along one of these days and say, "Hey, you got a little bit of an audience there, I see. How would a few $100,000 sound to the contribution of your channel? Well, you think that would help you grow a little bit?" To me, that just seems like what Sam's doing. To me, I don't believe someone who is that far onto the left wing of politics can truly believe all this center of the road stuff we hear from him when it's time to put up or shut up. I think he's doing it because he's still trying to appeal to that audience that has money, or potentially even get hired on at MSNBC one day. Who knows? I feel like that's what Sam's doing, and Jimmy said it best. There's too many people who don't really care about the issues. They just care about, how much more can they grow their channel or their success. And you've got to have that success by potentially getting in bed with that pit of vipers.
Yeah, they care more about clout.
Exactly.
It's really unfortunate, like they're preying on the weakness of working class people's desire for listening to people that understand their problems, but people like Sam Sedar and TYT who are out of touch are taking advantage of that, even though they'll sell out with a snap of a finger. And what these people also don't realize is, going back to the lesser of two evils thing, is once you already voted for the lesser evil and they get in office, like, oh, we're gonna hold their feet to the fire. It's too late. They don't need you anymore. You already voted for them. How are you gonna change their mind? What are you gonna do?
I mean, you got to look at it like this: hold their feet to the fire after they got to office. Okay, then tell me something. Donald Trump ran on policy A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, and a lot of them were very populist things. So he ran on it. Why wasn't his feet held to the fire by his base, and why weren't they implemented? Mm-hmm. Because when you get in office, You know who holds the president's feet to the fire? Congress and the Senate. Okay. Now the voters can get out there and kick, scream, and complain all they want to, but if you're going to vote for them again, why are they going to change anything? I've said this, and unfortunately, I was highly supportive of, and I'm not saying unfortunately for my support of Tulsi, by the way. I'm saying that I was highly supportive of Tulsi when she ran, but unfortunately, I did have to, just because I'm going to be honest and call it like I see it, I became very critical after she dropped out. Now, it's not that I despise Tulsi. It's not that I think she's the scum of the earth or anything like that. I think she made a really wrong move. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think it's something that's going to come back to haunt her when and if she tries to run for, say, president in the future. I think she's going to get a Bernie Sanders effect. A lot of people felt like Bernie sold out. The defense was she signed a pledge, okay? And I get that. But the praise of Joe Biden took it a little too far for some people, myself included in that. There's just no reason to bullshit for the guy. You could say, oh, well, that's being a team player. Well, wait a minute. If you're a people's person, you're supposed to put people above the party. So screw being a team player. You're a people's candidate, right? Well, if the party wants something that's going to screw the people and you represent the people, why be the team player for the party? Yeah, you can just come out there and say, okay, yep, I'll support the nominee, and that's that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how things turn out. I'll do my part to try to make sure that the things we ran on in this campaign, I will do what I can to try to implement them in the meantime and make my voice heard, and leave it at that. You don't have to go out there and tell everybody how great Joe Biden is. He's going to lead with the spirit of aloha. Well, when I became critical of that, I lost a few subscribers, and in the meantime, I also got a lot of pushback. I was told I was being irrational. I was told that I was jumping to too many conclusions, and that Tulsi Gabbard is going to really put the heat on Joe Biden, and that, hey, anything's possible. His opinion might change. He could become a brand new man, basically. Now, look, is it possible? Sure. Okay, but technically speaking, a lot of things could happen. And I don't like to deal in a lot of ifs, okay? My grandmother had a very good cliche when it comes to ifs, okay? If a bullfrog had wings, he wouldn't bust his ass every time he jumped. But guess what? They do, okay? That's the problem with all this if stuff. In my opinion, if Tulsi Gabbard or anyone else who wants to hold Joe Biden's feet to the fire doesn't have an awful lot of money that they can out-lobby these special interest people, to quote a scene from Grumpy Old Men, you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which one fills up first. That is just one of those things that it's not something you want to probably hear. It's really not something I enjoy saying. Hey, if we could really just, make some toffee for Joe Biden and that would change his mind, by all means. I don't make toffee, but I would learn how. Okay? I mean, seriously, if that's all it took, I would get in line to help. Okay? But it's just one of those things. There's cold, hard facts of life. You don't like hearing them. You don't like thinking about them, but it's the truth. Money talks, bullshit walks. Okay? He's going to listen to his donors. Why? Because they've made him who he is all these years. And he's not going to turn his back on those people, okay? You got to understand this. Those corrupt, rich people have probably got a lot of influence into other, territories as well, okay? For example, let's take a look at, Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Very rich guy, had big connections to a lot of people, most notoriously the Clintons, right? And what happened when all the dirt came out on him? He wound up committing suicide in prison, right? Mm-hmm. These people have a lot of power, they have a lot of money, and they have a lot of influence. If you just go turning your back on all these special interests to do the will of the people after you've been in bed with them, arguably even if you were never in bed with them, there is a danger to that. There is a serious danger to that. I forget which comedian said it, but they basically said, hey, when you take things too far, you get a ride through Dallas. Reference being right over here.
Yeah.
Okay? Joe Biden is indebted to these people. They've propped him up all these years. He said when he was a young politician, I would gladly take their money. I tried to take their money, but they said, hey, you're too young, sonny.
Yeah.
Come back when you got a few more years. Okay? He basically said he wanted to be the corporate, hooker back then. But they just wouldn't give it to him. He's going to be that way until the day he's gone from the face of this earth. And that's just a cold, hard fact of life. He's indebted to the big money special interests, and he's going to stay that way.
Thanks for watching that segment of Hear Me Out. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down below so you can get the latest on sports, pop culture, and progressive politics. Stay informed.